Today we're going to cover lesson 4.1. It's over graphing linear equations. Okay, so chapter 4 covers linear equations throughout, so we definitely need to be familiar with that term and understanding what it means. So that's where our first key vocabulary word comes in, which is a linear equation. It says a linear equation is an equation whose graph is a line, which makes sense. Line is the first four letters of linear, L-I-N-E. So you're looking for a graph. So we have an equation that represents a graph. Okay, so the equation and the graph go together. That's very important to understand. And it becomes a straight line. The points on the line are solutions of the equation. That sentence throws students off a lot. So with points on the line, those are ordered pairs. And every ordered pair has an x and a y value. So in your equation that you're going to have, you'll have an x and y in that equation. So basically what it's saying is when you take the points on the line and plug them into the x and y in the equation, they will be solutions of that equation, making that equation true, I should say. So that's what that means and something you need to be familiar with. And this is just giving an overview of what we're covering or what we're doing in this section. It says you will be given an equation and have to choose x values to find the y values. So basically you're given the x values, or you're choosing the x values I should say, and then whenever you plug them into the equation and work it out, you'll come up with the y value that goes with it. So then you'll have an x and a y value, and that's your ordered pair. And then it says you then use these points to graph the line. Okay, so then once you have enough ordered pairs, you'll take those ordered pairs and put them on the coordinate plane to graph that line from that equation. And then these are just your steps to doing that. The first one is make a table of values, and what that means is that table will be where you plug in your x value, work it out, get your y value, and then once you have your x and y value, those are your ordered pairs. And that will, once you have enough ordered pairs, you're going to plot those ordered pairs on your coordinate plane. Okay, so you'll have your coordinate plane, plot those ordered pairs, and then once the ordered pairs are plotted, you will draw a line through the points, and that will become your linear equation. Or that will become your straight line that represents your linear equation. Because like I discussed already, the equation and the graph go together. They are pretty much the same thing. That's something that students struggle to comprehend. So let's look at this example. They say graph y equals negative 2x plus 1. So this right here, this is considered the linear equation. Okay, there's your linear equation that we've already talked about. And they're wanting us to graph that linear equation. So we're going to go through the steps that we've already talked about. The first one was to make a table. So here's your table that we're going to talk about. You'll choose your x values. Usually you like to choose at least 3. You can choose more. But for this example, we're choosing 3 x values. And whenever I do it, I usually like to choose small numbers so it's easier to graph, so we're not having to graph like very large numbers. So like for example, I might just choose -1, 0, and 1 for x to make it much easier on myself. So then once I have my x values, I'm plugging those in for x in this equation. So what this new equation will look like would be y equals -2, and then in place of x, I'm putting this x value, -1 plus 1. And I'm going to go ahead and do that for each of the 3 x values I chose. So -2 times 0 plus 1, and then y equals -2 times 1 plus 1. And then you're just going to work each out to get your y value. Because once you work this out, you already have y by itself. So it'll be y equals whatever this equals. So -2 times -1 is +2. And then +2 plus 1 is +3. So my y value would be 3. The next one, -2 times 0 is 0. Plus 1 is 1. -2 times 1 is -2. Plus 1 is -1. So now, once you have picked your x value, plugged it in and got a y value, you now have your ordered pairs that you need. So what that'll look like is in this last box, I just put my x value, which was -1, and my y value in ordered pair form. So negative 1, 3, 0, 1, and 1, negative 1. Okay, and then the last step is to graph that. And my coordinate plane is over here, so I'm going to have to move the camera over, so just bear with me. I'm going to move the camera over there so we can graph these on the coordinate plane. Actually move this desk up a little bit so I can. Let's see. That should work. Okay, so like we already had, we discussed the coordinates we came up with were negative 1, 3, 0, 1, and 1, negative 1. So then we have to graph each of those ordered pairs. So the first one, negative 1, 3, remember the first number is your x value. So you have to move on the x-axis first, left to right. So negative 1 means I go left to negative 1, and then 3 is my y value, so go up to positive 3, and that's where you make your first point. Then the next one, 0 is my x, so it means I don't move left to right. 1 is my y, so I go up to 1 on the y value, or on the y-axis. Then lastly, 1, negative 1 means I move right 1, down to negative 1. So now, once I have my 3 points, the last step was to just draw the line through those points. That will look, and you want it to extend through them. You're not just connecting them, you're extending it through because it's a line that goes on forever. And then you put your arrows on the ends of them. So this graph represents this, like the equation we originally had was y equals negative 2x plus 1. That is this graph. Okay, this graph represents y equals negative 2x plus 1. Those go together. So that is your solution to this equation. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move the video back over so we can look at another example. So, we can finish that one up. Let's look at another one. So this is another equation. It says graph y equals 3x minus 3. And again, you're going to go through those same steps we just covered. So the first thing you do is select your x values. Again, I always like to choose small ones so it's easy to graph on my coordinate plane. So I'm just going to choose the same ones. Negative 1, 0, 1. You take those x values and plug them in for x in your equation. So we have y equals 3x, but instead of x now, I'm going to put my x values I chose in. So this one will be negative 1 minus 3. This will be y equals 3 times 0 minus 3. This will be y equals 3 times 1 minus 3. So again, all I'm doing is plugging in the x values I chose into my equation. And then I solve each one. So this one is 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6. 3 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. And then lastly, 3 times 1 is 3. 3 minus 3 is 0. Okay, so then we just put our ordered pairs together. My first one is negative 1, negative 6. Second one is 0, negative 3. Last one is 1, 0. So these are my 3 ordered pairs that I came up with from that equation. So again, then I will just go over to the coordinate plane and graph those three ordered pairs. So again, my first ordered pair you should have had written down already. So the first one is -1, -6. So -1 means I go to -1 on the x-axis, down to -6 on the y-axis. My first point would be right there. Next point is 0, -3. So 0 means I don't move left or right. -3 means I go down to -3 on the y-axis. And then 1, 0, I go over to 1 on the x, don't move up or down because 0 is my y value. And there's my 3 points. So last step is to just connect those 3 points, making it a straight line. And again, make sure you extend through it and put arrows on the ends of them. So there is your equation, or there is your graph that represents the equation y equals 3x minus 3. So that equation, y equals 3x minus 3, only has one graph that goes with it, and it's right here. Okay, this is the graph, or this is the straight line on a graph that goes with that equation. So every equation has a unique graph that goes with it. So you need to make sure you can compartmentalize the fact that equations go with graphs, and graphs go with equations. They represent each other. Okay, so that's important to understand in this section. Okay, so those are those types of graphs, and then you also have special types of graphs that you actually don't have to work out, but you will be told about these graphs sometimes, so you do need to know how they work. So this is talking about horizontal and vertical lines. So this is very important. The graph of y equals b, and b can be any number. Okay, that b is any number. So y equals any number is a horizontal line, meaning horizontal means it goes this way. The graph of x equals a, again, a just represents any number, is a vertical line. So if you have x equals just a number, it's a vertical line. Whatever the number is that x or y equal, you go to that number on the axis and make it the proper line. Okay, so what that means is if you have y equals 2, on the y-axis you go to 2 and make a horizontal line. If you have x equals -4, you go to -4 on that x-axis, make a vertical line. Okay, let's look at some examples of these, because like I said, there's no working anything out on this. You are just making those lines and making sure you're making the correct line. So I'm just going to make a makeshift coordinate plane so I don't have to keep moving back and forth for these. So like if I have something like this. First one, y equals -3. So first of all, y equals -3 means on the y-axis, which is the one going this way, I have to go to -3. So we have -1, -2, -3. On -3, remember the last slide said y equals a number is a horizontal line. So at y equals -3, I'm making a horizontal line. And that's it. That is your answer. So if it's y equals a number, you go to that number and make a horizontal line on that number. And that's your graph that represents that equation. So similar to the second one, if we have x equals 2, on the x-axis, this is my x-axis, I go to 2, 1, 2, and it said if you have x equals a number, you make a vertical line. So on x equals 2, I go to here, and I'm going to make a vertical line going straight up and down. So that is my graph for that equation. Okay, so y equals a number, you go make a horizontal line on that number on the y-axis. X equals a number, you make a vertical line on that number on the x-axis. So let's look at just a couple more to make sure we are good to go with this type of example. Okay, this is on your own, so again, if you pause the video and try this, and then once you come back, you'll see x equals -4. The x-axis is here. I go to -4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a -4. And then on the x equals, I have to make a vertical line. So here I will make a line that looks like that, going straight up and down with the arrows on the ends. And then lastly, we have y equals 6. So again, on the y-axis, I have to go to 6, but you're going to have to extend my graph here. I'm going to extend it a little bit. So this is the y-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On 6, remember, y equals is a horizontal line. So on that number right there, I make a horizontal line, and that is my graph to represent that. So that covers section 4.1. The main idea is knowing what a linear equation is, knowing a linear equation and a graph, like an equation and a graph go together. Okay, they're the same thing. You're picking x values to plug in to get your y values in order to graph those linear equations. And then finally, with horizontal and vertical lines, if you have a y equals a number, you go to that number on the y-axis, make a horizontal line. If you have x equals a number, you go to that number on the x-axis and make a vertical line. Okay, so that covers everything in 4.1. Hopefully you understood as we went through. Thanks for listening.